Приветствую вас, господин президент.
There you go.
Hello.
Добрый день.
Good to see you again.
So off to a little bit of a rocky start there, and then a friendly wave from President Biden. Now, the goal of this phone call with Putin was to convince him to stand down and that the cost of invading Ukraine would be too great. So did he succeed?
Well, I think it's too early to tell. I think what we do know is that Ukraine has emerged really as a geopolitical fault line between the United States and Russia. And that's because what scares Vladimir Putin the most is democracy. He might like to portray Russia as a besieged fortress under some sort of military threat, but it's not missiles or tanks that threaten him, it's liberty and freedom. And specifically, Ukraine's aspiration to join the European Union and NATO.
Dan, what did Joe Biden
and so
fail
while we might,
to accomplish during this call?
Well, I think that's what's too early to tell, whether we have deterred Russia from mounting an invasion of Ukraine. Russia still has roughly 100,000 troops on the border. And President Biden reportedly threatened Russia with economic measures, severe economic measures, possibly even blocking Russia's access to the SWIFT international banking system and additional military assistance to Ukraine. That might be enough to deter Russia's invasion. But there's a longer-term question about Ukraine's independence. Vladimir Putin has demanded a legal guarantee that Ukraine never join NATO. Whereas Secretary General of NATO Stoltenberg last week said that Russia should have no such veto over Ukraine's foreign policy. And so I think that's the long-term question. I can tell you from my experience that the intelligence community will be mounting a full-court press to collect intelligence on the reflections in Russia, specifically in the Kremlin, whether President Biden has succeeded or not in his efforts to deter Russia's invasion.
Yeah, and you know, Dan, listening to lawmakers yesterday after this phone call, it was really interesting because Washington has never been more partisan, but you had both Republicans and Democrats agree that nothing should be off the table, not even military intervention on the U.S. front. And I think that a lot of people at home are listening to this topic, listening to this all play out overseas between Russia and Ukraine, and they're thinking, you know, that doesn't affect my life. Wake me up when President Biden starts talking about gas prices. So why should Americans care about this?
Well, you know, one thing we learned from the previous century when we fought 2 world wars against dictatorships, and I fear rearing its ugly head again today. Dictatorships are on the march around the world with intensity unprecedented since the Second World War. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, among others. And if we don't stand up for a democracy like Ukraine, then we really don't stand for much of anything at all. It doesn't mean we have to send U.S. troops to fight the Russians. But Ukraine is really a critical country for Europe's security. And Russia should not be allowed to invade another country and impose their will as they are seeking to do.
Dan Hoffman, thank you very much for your insight.
That has an impact on our NATO members in the Baltics as well as Poland.
Yeah, it certainly does. I think that one of the main reasons why this is such an important topic is because if Russia takes over Ukraine, it doesn't stop there. Poland, Lithuania could be next. And, you know, as the United States, we stand up for democracy and freedom.
There's also the question of what China takes away from this call.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, thank you so much for your insight. We so appreciate it.